Every year, travelers vanish along America's most isolated desert highways. Local legends warn that after sunset, if something calls your name from the darkness, don't answer.
Think of this as your essential, culturally grounded safety briefing for traveling through the American Southwest. If you're gearing up for a road trip through that vast, arid wilderness, you're stepping into a landscape that is absolutely steeped in ancient history and deep spiritual significance. As a cultural expert, I'm here to guide you through not just the physical realities of the terrain, but the strict cultural boundaries and traditional protections you absolutely need to respect to ensure a safe journey.
So, say you're driving through the high desert tonight, right? Especially those famously desolate stretches out in the Four Corners. Well, before you do, we have to talk about an unseen, deeply unspoken threat out there on those isolated roads. Because the desert at night, it's a completely different beast than during the day. It's silent, it's vast, and according to deeply held indigenous folklore, it is definitely not always empty.
Here's a quick look at your safety briefing. We're going to run through the unspoken cultural rules, the anatomy of the threat itself, where the modern danger zones are, and then the strict defensive behaviors and traditional protections you need to know.
Starting off with Section 1, the unspoken desert taboo. To really grasp what we're dealing with out there, you have to understand the Yi Nadlo Shi. And look, we're not talking about some mythical, made-up Hollywood monster here. We are talking about a corrupted human practitioner. In Navajo tradition, a medicine man holds immense, sacred power to heal. But if that power gets inverted, if those sacred rites are perverted for dark, selfish reasons, that practitioner transforms into a malevolent, shape-shifting entity. This is literal human evil weaponized through corrupted spiritual practices. And that brings us to a massive cultural rule. Traditional elders will literally refuse to speak its name aloud. Why? Because simply saying the name, or even casually gossiping about it, is seen as a direct and dangerous invitation to the entity. This isn't just spooky superstition to them. It's a known law of cause and effect in the desert. You don't call out to the darkness, because the darkness might just answer back. We really need to strip away all that sensationalized internet creepypasta to confront the visceral, genuine reality of the Navajo witch. The internet has kind of turned this incredibly serious cultural taboo into a cheap campfire story, which is super dangerous because it completely diminishes the real, practical risks of violating these indigenous boundaries. We're looking at this strictly through a cultural and survival lens today.
Moving right along to Section 2, Anatomy of the Mimic.
Knowing exactly how this thing operates is honestly half the battle. This entity is an absolute master of mimicry. First off, auditory mimicry. If you hear a loved one's voice, or maybe a baby crying out in the dark brush, it's trying to lure you off the safety of the road. Visually, it triggers a severe uncanny valley effect. It might look like a deer, a bear, or a wolf, but the proportions are just terrifyingly wrong. We're talking backward-bending joints or movements that are incredibly jagged and too fast. It's almost human, but physically, fundamentally wrong.
All right, on to Section 3, the modern highway threat.
You might be wondering, where exactly are the hotspots today? Well, encounters dramatically spike right where ancient tribal lands intersect with our modern thoroughfares. Those deeply desolate, silent highways across the Four Corners are notorious for highly unnerving sightings. And to top it off, a lot of the vast national parks out there heavily overlap with historic hunting grounds warned about in oral traditions, strongly linking to localized, unexplained disappearances.
Now guys, this isn't just ancient history. As urban sprawl pushes further into these hunting grounds, we're actually seeing undeniable modern evidence actively validating those sacred oral traditions. Take the massive rise in the not deer phenomenon creeping closer to suburban developments. Or look at 2026, those viral, highly scrutinized trail cam and thermal recordings capturing figures that completely defied biological explanation. It reignited public fear and pretty much confirmed what indigenous elders have been saying for centuries.
Which brings us to Section 4, Strict Defensive Behaviors.
Okay, listen up, because this is your actionable, practical survival checklist. If you encounter something unnatural out there, you must stick to these cultural rules. Number 1, absolutely no eye contact. In Navajo tradition, eye contact is a literal conduit for the entity to lock onto your spirit and inflict its malice. Number 2, do not acknowledge it out loud. Don't point, don't turn to your passenger and say, "Hey, look at that weird dog." Pretend it literally doesn't exist. And number 3, keep moving. Maintain your speed, stare straight ahead at the road, and get out of there without a second thought.
Section 5, Traditional Protective Rituals.
Now, if behavioral avoidance isn't enough, it's crucial to understand the traditional tools historically used to guard the mind. Again, these aren't fairy tales. They are deeply revered protective rituals meant to break the psychological warfare inflicted by the entity. Cultural practitioners rely heavily on the application of ceremonial ash, specifically cedar ash, to mask their presence. They also burn sacred mountain tobacco to purify the space and block malevolent energies. And most importantly, they recite highly specific, guarded protective prayers. Outsiders shouldn't appropriate these prayers, obviously, but knowing this sophisticated spiritual defense system exists proves exactly how seriously this threat is taken.
Because here's the thing. Letting panic set in actually invites what's known as Skinwalker sickness. This isn't just a simple physical bug. It's a profound psychological toll. The entity literally feeds on your terror. By giving into fear, by locking eyes, or by acknowledging its presence, you open the door to extreme paranoia, physical draining, and intense illness. Your absolute best shield is a calm, incredibly disciplined mind that simply refuses to engage.
This is exactly why those modern internet influencers going on skinwalker hunts are such a massive problem. Treating this landscape like some internet game is deeply disrespectful to local tribes, and honestly, it puts everyone nearby at extreme risk. By wandering out into sacred lands at night with cameras trying to provoke an encounter, they're practically ringing a dinner bell for a predatory force. They are recklessly inviting the exact psychological warfare we just talked about.
Bringing us to our final section, the final night warning.
So, what does this all mean for you out there? The undeniable overlap between those sacred traditions and modern thermal footage proves that you cannot treat the desert night like a playground. You are a guest in a landscape that operates by rules way older than the asphalt you're driving on. Respecting indigenous boundaries, staying out of restricted tribal lands physically, and honoring the taboos culturally is your ultimate safety protocol.
Keep this chilling reality in the back of your mind on your next trip. True safety in the four corners means knowing exactly when to decline the invitation to look a little closer. The desert is breathtakingly beautiful, but it demands respect. If you find yourself on a lonely highway at 2 a.m. and you spot something moving in the brush that just doesn't quite fit the shape of a deer, will you know to just keep driving? Maintain your speed, eyes forward, and stay safe out there, travelers.